All right, hello everyone. It's Chris Shelley. We're going to do some iRacing tips here. The topic of the video is 3 tips to wreck less in iRacing, and these are mostly oval focused, but you can apply these in any racing discipline on iRacing or any racing for that matter. But in iRacing, it's specifically important because you want to avoid incidents to get your safety rating up to drive more official series, or if you want to avoid incidents in your league races so that the drivers that you're racing with every week do not get mad at you. To start, we have these 3 tips that I think can help you get very far in preventing yourself from getting caught up in wrecks and incidents. The tips are spacing, threat recognition, and proactive decisions. I'll go into these in depth. And yeah, let's get started. All right, first tip, spacing. I simply define spacing as just distance between yourself and other drivers and objects on the track. It's about leaving enough distance between yourself so that you don't run into other drivers. This is important, and I think you would think it goes without saying, but it's something you need to be very aware of during a race at all times, because you're on the track and you're sharing with other drivers, and those other drivers are struggling. They're trying to go as fast as they can. They're trying to use up all the racetrack they can, and they're trying to get any advantage on you that they can. When you're in a race and your cars are pushing, your tires are working hard, you're not able to adjust your line that quickly. Right? You know, it takes time to get your car slowed down if you see a wreck in front of you. It takes time to get your car sped up on a restart or the start of a race, or coming out of the corner on a short track, right? So when you are driving around other drivers, you always need to give yourself a little bit extra space in order to avoid contact. Now, this is not necessarily the ideal way to race if you're looking just for the best position you can, but it's the most ideal way to race if you're trying to avoid contact. And to finish first, you must first finish. Always give a little bit more space than is necessarily required, unless you have an immense amount of trust in the other driver, or you're fine with yourself wrecking. Which, if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're not happy about how much you're wrecking in iRacing. All right, so when you look at these arrows, you have the bottom one, the middle one, and top one. Bottom one, it's very simple. Racing surface at Atlanta Motor Speedway is not on the apron. So you want to leave some space between yourself and the apron, right? This is on corner entry. So as I get further into the corner, I'll get a lot closer to this apron. But you need to know that you don't want to put your car too down below on this apron and spin yourself out or go straight up the track, because it's not going to turn because there's no banking down there. I'm in the 15 car. I need to know that. I need to make sure I'm entering so I don't hit that apron. Now, the 21 car on my outside, they also need to be careful of me getting down into the apron. What if I did hit the apron and I slid up the track? That's why they want to keep this amount of space between me. And they might get a little bit closer if they get a little more aggressive. But if their purpose is to not wreck, they'll give a good amount of space because they don't want to crash as well. So I give space here down on the bottom. It'll get closer, but I need to make sure I'm not below it. I also need to make sure I don't slide up into the driver by hitting the apron or losing grip otherwise, and slide up to the 21 car on the outside. 21 car also needs to make sure they stay off the wall, and this is something I need to process as well, which means I need to make sure I'm further enough down that this 21 car isn't forced up into the wall, especially on entry or corner exit. That's a huge problem and huge way. One of the main reasons you see wrecks, especially on ovals, where you're surrounded by a wall on corner exit on to your right, and you could just smack somebody or force somebody into it. And that's not only is that upsetting to the other driver, you could be taking yourself out as well. So giving extra space more than is needed, that's important. This becomes even more important when you're 3 wide, right? It's more difficult, not only because you have less space, but you have an extra driver to mind when you're heading through these corners. See the 4 car here, they're worried about not hitting the apron. They're also worried about not hitting the 21. They hit the 21, they could hit the 15, me in the 15. This becomes a problem is because the 4 car doesn't know exactly how far up or down the racetrack I am. So if I'm pinching the 21 car and the 4 car is trying to run the middle, 21 has nowhere to go. We're going to all crash, right? So the 4 car needs to run lower, give space for more than 2 car widths, right? He has 2 cars above him. But if he wants to avoid a wreck, he needs to give more than 2 car widths of space in order to avoid a wreck. Notice how there's these gaps, these arrows, these blue arrows. Remember those. Keep some space between you if you don't want to wreck. Give more than enough space. 21's leaving space here. They're not going to put me up in the wall. They're not putting this guy down in the apron before the corner even starts, and even during the corner. This is early. This was early in the race, so we're all really just trying to make sure we don't wreck. Get through this race start, and keep going. Do not wreck. Give people space. Give people enough space. It's a balance when you're trying to go for wins and you're trying to hold on for position and you're trying to advance your position. You want to get close, but if you really want to make sure you don't wreck, you got to make sure you're giving enough space. All right, so here's the example. We're gonna start with this is the race start. Here's me in 15 car. You can see this 21 car down on the bottom. Takes it 3 wide. And normally people would be upset about this, right? 3 wide. This is lap 1, right? But look, we're giving each other enough space that it works. The only reason people get upset about 3 wide is because they might not have the trust or the skill to actually give people enough space and make sure they don't wreck each other, right? You always need to give enough space. And this depends on varies on the track, right? Atlanta Motor Speedway, notoriously wide, 1.5 mile wide groove, plenty of space to race. You can drive all over the racetrack and maintain and grip. Some tracks aren't like that. You go to Darlington, you're not going to be able to do that easily. That's where it becomes a little more tough. You have to have a lot more trust in other drivers. But regardless, you're going to need to give space in order to prevent accidents. Here, let's ignore that. We're bringing a 10. But notice how I also do not run this guy over heading into the corner. I get off the throttle earlier than him because I'm behind him. It's all about, that's where you hear the phrase give and take, right? Give space and you take space. You don't go too far, you don't get too close. You give just enough space so you can both, not even just enough space, more than enough space so you can both make it through the corner and not wreck each other. Because if someone loses grip, you don't want to be the first one to get punished for their mistake. All right. Second tip is threat recognition. Now this one is pretty easy, and I think a lot of drivers already do this inside their heads. But if you're not thinking about it, you need to start thinking about it. It's very simple. Which drivers are dangerous and which parts of the track or the race are dangerous, right? Everyone's always worried about turn 1 and the corner, especially at like road courses where there are heavy braking zones heading to turn 1, or short tracks where everyone's gonna pile up or be right on top of each other heading into the braking zone on turn 1. That's where you need to be careful, right? And all these tips are interrelated. So with threat recognition, if you know it's going to be dangerous in a turn 1, you give people space, right? Here, turn 1, you need to give people space. There's no need to be too close to each other. You have plenty of time during the race, and you know this is the toughest part. This is one of the toughest parts of the race because everyone's bunched up and on double file on a start or a restart. You give each other enough space to operate because you know people are going to try to make moves and people might make mistakes. You can also notice which drivers seem to be dangerous. So something that happens a lot in iRacing is you'll hear multiple people complain about the same driver during a single race. And this is, while it seems toxic at first, it's also something that while you're racing, you need to be aware of. You don't need to say anything about them or bash them or try to make them feel bad. But what you do need to do is try to avoid contact with them and give them more space than necessary, even more space than you might give any other driver that you haven't raced against before or haven't had any experiences with before, right? If you hear someone saying that someone's wrecked them, or multiple people are saying that this one driver was wrecking people, give them extra space. Don't be their third or fourth or fifth person that they've gotten into that race. It's not worth it. Trust me. If you want to finish first, you must first finish. Don't let other drivers get in your way of that. All right, so here's an example of the best example I could come up with threat recognition. Because sometimes it's not only one driver responding. But when you're considering threat recognition, it needs to be what is happening on the racetrack. What do you see on the track? What do you see these other drivers doing? Where might problems arise? This is in the middle of a 15-lap run, right? Tires are wearing. People are trying to fight for positions. Who do you notice is the most inconsistent driver? Who's giving the people the least amount of space who is making the most mistakes and is putting other drivers at risk. When you see that, you see people making mistakes, putting other drivers at risk. There should be something in your mind that should be able to say, oh, if there's going to be a crash, it's probably going to be this driver or that driver, or one or the two. You don't know. Maybe a whole 5-6 cars that are just racing entirely too hard for a certain position too early in the race, right? Give them space. And also prepare to react when something does happen. You're already thinking about it. You might as well prepare to react in case something does happen, like this right here. People hitting the wall, not giving any space coming off the corner. That's just a wreck. Don't do it. Don't let someone take you out when you know it was exactly what was going to happen. All right, the last tip I have for this video is making proactive decisions about your race plan and how you plan to avoid wrecks. So, the best way to actually avoid wrecks is not the micro scale of dodging through the smoke, drifting around people in the middle of the corners while cars are spinning all around. That's not the best way to avoid wrecks, right? The best way to avoid wrecks is to not be there in the first place. So that's whether it means you have to stay out on slightly older tires, not ridiculously older tires, but slightly older tires to give yourself track positions. If you know that you can hold your position there and not be stuck in the back of the pack, especially if it's like a super speedway race where you don't really need to pit for tires, stay in the front, stay away from the pack, stay away from the mess, right? Super speedways are a bit more nuanced than that, but your race planner strategy needs to give you the best chance to avoid getting in wrecks and collisions if you want to wreck less in your races. If you want to gain safety rating, it's not about winning races, it's about finishing races with 0 incidents. You don't want to make car contacts. You don't want to have lost control. You don't want to get knocked off the track. Make your race plan about that. That's why you always heard, I'm just here for SR. If you're just here for safety rating, if you're just in a race for safety rating, and this goes for even beyond iRacing, for any racing game, right? The safest place to be is to start a race is on the pit road. Sure, you might be a half a lap back, but you won't. Chances are you're not going to get involved in a first lap wreck. You're not going to get involved in a first turn wreck. Now, this is the extreme example, but it's the way you need to start thinking. Make decisions before things happen about how you're going to be as far away from contacts and collision as possible. Obviously, there's a compromise where you're going to want to have to take some risk if you want to get some reward, and that reward being better finish. But you need to consider, how many cars are you starting around? What is the race distance? How close do cars run during normal racing conditions, right? Say if you know you're going to start qualifying in the middle of the field and you're not going to have that great of a qualifying start, you might as well, and you have a low I rating, you're going to start at the back. If you're very back and you don't qualify, just don't qualify. If you really want to just get a clean race and finish the race and don't get collected. If you're on the pit grid, right? Say you already qualified and there's a driver that's been in your past 3 races and they've wrecked somebody in every single one of those races, right? And for some reason they haven't been protested yet and you're racing against them, you're starting right next to them. Or make the proactive decision, okay, I'm going to give this driver a lot more space, maybe twice the amount of space if I can, so to make sure I do not get wrecked by them and I can finish this race. It's how long is the race distance, right? If you're at the start of a race, and it's someone's heading to turn 1, people are wrecking each other at a start of a 50, 60, 70 lap race at a 1.5 mile track. You got an hour to go in the race, maybe 30 minutes to an hour to go in the race. There's no need to be making super aggressive moves. You need to proactively decide, okay, I'm not going to go in and push my limits too hard when it comes to racing around too many other people. If you want to wreck less, these are the decisions you need to start making. You can scale these decisions back when it's time for you to go and win races, right? If it's 5 laps to go and you want to win, do what you got to do, but you need to still keep in mind, okay, who are the threats around me? How much spacing do I need to give if I want to make a 3-eye move? Are they going to give enough space? Are there drivers that don't want to give enough space? Is it possible to even take it 3 wide, 2 wide at certain parts of the track? All of these tips I'm teaching are interrelated. You can apply if you making proactive decisions about how much spacing you're going to give, making proactive decisions about avoiding certain drivers or certain packs of drivers. It's all about getting the best finish you can and understanding how you make proactive decisions to achieve those best finishes when it comes to avoiding wrecks. But thank you for watching. That's all I have to say for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Remember those 3 tips: giving people enough space, making sure you're considering all factors like track conditions, tire wear, how much, and how quickly your cars can react in order to give each other enough space when someone does make a mistake, they inevitably will, because we're all human, that you're not wrecking anybody and you're not wrecking your own race as well. This also ties in with threat recognition. If you know someone is going to be a dangerous driver and need more space, give them more space. It's not worth you wrecking your race because you overly trust somebody and you know they're going to do if you're heading into a race, you know there's going to be certain aspects of the race where you might want to, grab more track position or just choose the safer option, like not staying out at the very end of the race on 2 tires or 0 tires when you know you're just going to get run over. Don't do it. Prioritize finishing first in these steps. I'm sure you'll be involved in those steps. Please like and subscribe for more iRacing tips. I also have some iRacing 4 races you can check out. I'll see you next time. Hopefully I'll see you on the track as well. I'm Chris Shelley. See y'all later.